Welcome to the Win Streaks preview and prediction of all 32 NFL teams for the upcoming 2017 season. Over the next few weeks, I will be covering all 32 teams, so please subscribe on YouTube or the podcast platform you're listening on so you don't miss an episode. My name is Corey Foister. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Corey Foister. Follow the show on social media, that is Twitter at Winstreak News, Facebook.com/thewinstreak, thewinstreak.com. Leave a review and subscribe on the podcast platform you're listening on. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Soaring Jets Productions. Contact us at soaringjetproductions@gmail.com. Join our fantasy football league. You can find out more about that on our Twitter and on our Facebook page, so please check that out. Top 10 Super Bowl matchups we want to see is our latest top 10. If you have never listened to a Win Streak podcast, please check us out, subscribe. We do a weekly podcast just reviewing all the latest happenings in the sports world. We're going to have just a fun time this upcoming 2017 NFL season. But today I am doing my 2017 Washington Redskins preview and prediction. This is Washington's 85th season in the NFL. 2017 marks the fourth season under head coach Jay Gruden. The Redskins finished 8-7-1 in 2016, good for third place in the NFC East. Of course, that tie coming in London against the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm sure any Redskins fans that are listening right now, I totally agree with you. I hate these London games because they're just so wacky, and I think it's just a waste of time, and you have to go so early. I'm a big New York Jets fan, and the Jets had a bye like after week 4, and it's like I hate byes being so early. It's like have a bye after like the 8th or the 9th week in the NFL. It's just I hate London games. But Pro Bowlers in 2016 for the Washington Redskins include linebacker Ryan Kerrigan, tight end Jordan Reed, offensive guard Brandon Shepard, offensive tackle Trent Williams, and quarterback Kirk Cousin. Redskins and Eagles are the only teams in 2016 that played 7 regular season games against teams that would reach the playoffs. 2 against the Giants and the Cowboys, but you also had the Packers, Lions, and Steelers. Redskins went 2-5 against these teams, and a big reason why the Redskins did not make it back into the playoff. The Washington Redskins are on a 1-year playoff drought. Last playoff game was the NFC wildcard game back in 2015. The Redskins have played more than 1,000 games since 1932 and one of only 5 NFL franchises to record 600 regular and postseason wins, reaching that mark in 2015. The Redskins have won 5 NFL championships. They've won the NFL championship in 1937 and 1942, and Super Bowls in 1982, 1987, and 1991. They have won 5 NFC championships, 14 division championships. They have made 24 playoff appearances. The Redskins' first team with an official marching band, and they are also the first team to have a fight song in the NFL. Hail to the Redskins. Forbes ranks Redskins as the 5th most valuable franchise in the NFL, valued at $2.95 billion. Redskins constantly has one of the best attendance totals in the NFL. Owner Dan Snyder, a lot of people do not like the owner of the Redskins, Dan Snyder. Dan Snyder has, I don't care how you feel about the whole Redskins name controversy, he has handled the controversy awful. He has handled it the worst possible way you could handle a controversy in the NFL. And, you talk about Commissioner Roger Goodell, there might be somebody more stupid in the NFL than Roger Goodell, and Dan Snyder is probably that guy. Also, I think he's just a dumb dick in general. He makes a lot of bad football moves. Look at trading up in the draft, giving all those draft picks to the Rams to get RG3, who's now probably not even going to be on a roster this season. Biggest Redskins franchise what if? What happens if Joe Theismann's career didn't end on November 18th, 1985? Of course, all Redskins fans know that is the game where Lawrence Taylor took out Joe Theismann's knees and he was never able to play ever again. Redskins finished 10-6 in 1985. Theismann wasn't finished. He had gas still left in the tank. He had won a Super Bowl in 1983. He was just 2 years removed from that. Lawrence Taylor sacked not only Joe Theismann, but the Redskins franchise, because I honestly believe Joe Theismann could have went back to another Super Bowl. The Redskins barely missed out on a playoff berth that year in 1985, and that Joe Theismann injury on November 18th, 1985 is really why the Redskins didn't make it back to the playoffs this year, and they were a different franchise after Joe Theismann left. Joe Theismann arguably is one of the best players the Redskins have ever had. Also, biggest franchise what if? Name change. What would you do? What personally I would like to hear from you guys. If you're on YouTube, leave a comment below, or if you're listening via the podcast, send me an email at soaringjetproductions@gmail.com. What would you change the name of the Redskins? Because eventually it just seems like how everything is going, the Redskins are definitely going to change their name when Dan Snyder passes away or sells the team. Somebody's eventually going to change the name. Personally, to me, I like the Washington Senators because the Washington Senators was a old baseball team that played in Washington, D.C., the first professional sports team in D.C., the Washington Senators, and it would be cool because it actually fits into, Washington, the center of politics, and also honoring the old baseball team from so many years ago. I think the Washington Senators, I like the name Senators. You got the Ottawa Senators in the NHL. It just seems like a good name, has a nice ring to it, Washington Senator. What would you name the Redskins if you were owner of the Washington franchise? Moving on to the 2017 season, in 2016, going into Week 15, the Redskins looked like they were a good bet to make the playoffs at 7-5-1. But they would go on to only win one game and lose the remaining two. The dagger being their loss against the New York Giants at home. The Rams' offense last season was strong, but they lost offensive coordinator Sean McVay. Or my bad. The Redskins' offense last season was strong, but they lost coordinator Sean McVay. He is now the head coach of the Rams. That's how I got the Rams and the Redskins mixed up. But Sean McVay is now the head coach of the Rams. I think it's a great hiring by the Rams, and it really hurt the Redskins because he was a good offensive coordinator. The offensive side of the ball for the Redskins is why they won 7 games last year, or won 8 games, my bad. They lost Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson in the offseason. Kirk Cousin isn't happy with the franchise tag and not being paid. Biggest positive change, they improved the defense. They changed defensive coordinators. First round defensive end Jonathan Allen, linebacker Zach Brown, and safety DJ Swearinger should greatly improve their defense. The biggest negative change was once again McVay, Garçon, and Jackson departures hurt that offense. GM Scott McCloughan leaving also, I think, was just hurt to lose your GM. A lot of these teams lost their GM, the Chiefs, the Bills. just recently the Panthers let go of their GM. Personally, to me, I'm not a big fan of firing your GM in the summer, but that's just me. Jay Gruden is 21, 26, and 1 through 3 seasons. His seat isn't hot, but it also isn't cold. A bad start could be the end of Gruden in Washington. Going on to the schedule, preseason, you're at Ravens, home for the Packers and the Bengals, and then at Tampa Bay. I think that's a pretty good preseason schedule. The only one you really have to travel for is to the Buccaneers. The Ravens are only probably about an hour and a half away in Baltimore with that traffic. Going to the regular season, the Redskins have 5 primetime games at Chiefs on ESPN Monday Night Football, Raiders on NBC, at Eagles on ESPN, Giants on NBC, and at Cowboys on NFL Network. So if you're a Redskins fan, your team is going to get noticed. There's a lot of good primetime games matchup. I'm pretty excited. You got the Giants, Eagles, Cowboys, all that division rivalry, and you got the Chiefs and the Raiders. So uh, nice to see some primetime games, but also it's pretty hard. You're going to have to definitely step up because these are all going to be extremely hard games. Looking at it, our game by game prediction here, starting out September 10th, home for the Philadelphia Eagles. Worst case scenario, I say you lose the Eagles. Best case scenario, I say you win against the Philadelphia Eagles. At Rams, I say worst case you lose because you're going to Los Angeles. Best case you win against the Rams. In my opinion, I think the Redskins are a better team than the Rams. You come home September 24th to play the Oakland Raiders. I say there's no way you are beating the Oakland Raiders. Granted, even though the Raiders have to travel all the way to the East Coast, I think the Raiders are just a better team. So you go into October, worst case scenario, you are 0-3. Best case scenario, you are 2-1. October 2nd, you're at Kansas City. Worst case scenario, I say you lose that game. Best case scenario, you somehow manage to pull off a victory against the Kansas City Chiefs, but they are a hard team to play on the road. That stadium is incredibly loud. Then you have a bye. Then you come back October 15th to play the 49ers at home. Best case, worst case scenario, I say you are beating the San Francisco 49ers. October 23rd at Philadelphia. Best case, worst case, I say you lose that game on Monday Night Football. Eagles, they're hard to play at home. October 29th, home against the Dallas Cowboys. Worst case scenario, you lose this game. But best case scenario, I say you actually win this game because I think that the Dallas Cowboys are doomed for a sophomore slump. I don't like what they've done in the offseason. I'm worried about Ezekiel Elliott. I don't know what the hell he's thinking. So I give the Redskins a chance at home against the Dallas Cowboys. So you go into November, worst case scenario, you are 1-6. Best case scenario, you are 5-2. November 5th at Seattle. I do not see you winning that game at all. November 12th against the Vikings. I say you win that game. I say you beat the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings, though, to me, are the biggest wild card in all of the NFL because I could see the Vikings being a 8-8 team, but I could also see them being a 10-6 playoff team, but also a 4-12 loser team that doesn't go anywhere. November 19th, you're at New Orleans. Best case, worst case, I say you beat the New Orleans Saints. 23rd, home against the New York Giants. Worst case scenario, you lose against the Giants. Best case scenario, you win against the Giants because the Redskins, even though the Giants, in my opinion, have a better roster, The only thing better that the Redskins might have is maybe a quarterback. I know that's kind of bold to say because Eli Manning has won 2 Super Bowls, but looking at it the last couple of seasons, Kirk Cousin has been pretty much tied with Eli Manning. And at time, Eli Manning seems like he's holding back the Giants, especially with those interceptions. So the Giants can't, or the Redskins can play with the Giants in Washington, D.C. So I give you a chance there. November 30th at Cowboys, even though I think the Cowboys are going to go on a sophomore slump. I just don't see how you're going to beat the Cowboys at Jerry World. So I'm saying that's a loss either way, best case, worst case. So you go into December, worst case scenario, you are 3-9. Jay Gruden is probably gone or he's going to get fired. Best case scenario, you are 8-4. You're looking for possibly to win that division or a wild card spot. December 10th at San Diego Chargers. Worst case, you lose that game. Best case, you win that game. Once again, East Coast team traveling to the West Coast. You got Phillip Rivers. It's going to be an easier game than it's going to be a harder game than the Rams that you have to go out there and play. But that definitely hurt. The Redskins have to travel out there and to Los Angeles to play the Rams week 2, and then in December to play the San Diego Chargers. Personally, to me, if I'm a Redskins fan, I wish the Chargers were coming to cold, Washington D.C., Maryland, December 10th instead traveling all the way to LA, but at least, hey, you get to enjoy the nice Southern California weather out there. December 17th, the Arizona Cardinals come to town. Worst case scenario, you lose that game. Best case scenario, you win that game. The Cardinals, I think, will be looking for a wild card spot as long as Carson Palmer and Larry Fitzgerald are healthy, they're playing good, and that defense can at least somewhat keep it together. So it's going to be a good matchup. You could see two potentially teams looking for a playoff spot beating the hell out of each other. December 24th, Broncos come into town. I say best case, worst case, you beat the Denver Broncos. I don't think the Denver Broncos are going to be that good. I personally think at this point with the Chiefs and the Raiders in the AFC West that the Broncos are going to have nothing to play for. So, and the Redskins will have something to play for. The Broncos could always play spoiler. But best case, worst case, I say you win that game. And then you finish the season at New York, technically at New Jersey, playing the New York Giants. I say best case, worst case, you lose that game. The Giants are probably going to be looking for a wild card too. I just personally think that the Giants are going to have the upper leg, if anything else, just because they are playing at home. So, best case scenario, I can see the Washington Redskins going 11-5. I can really see, best case scenario, you beat the Eagles, you can beat the Giants, you can beat the Dallas Cowboys if they go on a sophomore slump. You can beat two crappy LA teams. The only problem is you have to go to LA. You got the 49ers at home. You could potentially upset the Chiefs at Kansas City. You have the Vikings. The Seahawks game is going to be terribly tough, but maybe you upset the Seattle Seahawks. You got the Saints. That should be an easy win. The Cardinals and the Broncos, those give you some potential wins also. Worst case scenario, you only win 4 games. You go 4-12. I still think that you could beat the 49ers, possibly the Vikings, the Saints at home, or the Saints on the road. That could be a little hard, but I could still see you winning that game. So my final prediction is that the Washington Redskins go 7-9 this year. Like I said, Rams, 49ers, Eagles, Vikings, Saints, Chargers, Broncos all present good shots at a W. Raiders at Chiefs, 4 against Giants, Cowboys at Seattle is why I doubt they can have a winning record and make the playoffs, but they can prove us wrong. They totally can. Kirk Cousin, I think he's a good quarterback, and if Dan Snyder is for some reason listening to this podcast, please sign him to a long-term contract because you're not going to get better than Kirk Cousin, especially at 7-9. You're not going to draft the next franchise player being that high up in the NFL draft. But this was my 2017 preview of the Washington Redskins. Like I said, I'm doing preview for all 32 NFL teams. They are appearing on YouTube, on my podcast feed. They appeared on the podcast feed first before I uploaded on YouTube. So if you want to get these episodes as quick as possible, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, all of these great podcast providers. And I have, like I said, the Jets, the Chargers, the Browns, I think I have the Rams up. There's a few teams. I got about 5 teams up. So please go back and check them out. Once again, my name is Corey Foister. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Corey Foister. Follow the show on social media. That is Twitter at Winstreak News, Facebook.com/TheWinstreak, thewinstreak.com. Leave a review and subscribe on the podcast platform you're listening on. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Soaring Jets Productions. Contact us at soaringjetsproductions@gmail.com. Join our fantasy football league. Top 10 Super Bowl matchup we want to see is now live on our podcast feed. And once again, my name is Corey Foister. This was the Win Streak. Please subscribe. Check out our regular weekly wrap-up show. We have a lot of fun stuff planned for this upcoming NFL season. But until then, this is Corey Foister. Keep on winning, everybody.